Hey y'all, check it out. 9-inch Ford, completely stripped down. It's ready for assembly. Got the old gear out of it and everything. Cleaned up all the bearings and everything. Here's our new 567 gear ready to go in. This episode, we're gonna put this gear into this housing and set it up correctly. All right, let's get busy. Make sure that your caps are separated and you're identifying. What I do is I will put dots on one side and not the other. So like I've got dots where I've took a punch and punched it on this cap and on this housing right here. Reason for that is because they machine for your adjuster into these two pieces together, so this one won't fit over there. Your adjuster won't work right, it'll bind up. All right, so make sure you keep that separate. Since I am reusing my bearings and everything, the race that goes in here, I'm keeping the race over here for this, race for this side over here. I even keep my adjusters on the sides that they were on. All right, because we're reusing everything. Now, we're gonna start with the pinion, okay? So we got the pinion support here, races and already in it and everything. We are doing this with minimum tools, okay? All right, so, and one other thing, we're just gonna use light machine oil. That's all this is. This is like 10 weight oil. And so when you see me putting this on threads of anything like that during assembly, it's just lightweight oil. All right. That bearing is on. Make sure if you're driving it using obviously a big shop press. I don't have room in shop for everything, but make sure whatever you're using that you are catching that inside housing of that bearing, not touching the cage. That's really important, y'all. All right, so that bearing is on. Again, I'm just going to put just a little bit of this lightweight machine oil on here. All right. Everything's already been washed, dried, and cleaned. So that is ready. Now, an important point. We're putting this together without a seal. And the reason we're putting this together without a seal is because preload is measured without a seal. Okay? The seal itself, just depending on the brand of the seal and how it's fitting onto the shaft and everything, a seal could read 5 inches 5-inch pounds of load, and a seal could read 20-inch pounds of load or 25-inch pounds of load, and it just be the rubber on the seal dragging. So we put the yoke in, put it together, we get the preload and everything right, and then you just take the yoke off, put the seal on. Not a big deal. All right. So the question is, are you going to use a crush or are you going to use a solid? Now me, circle track racing, I am strictly going to use a solid. I've run a lot of situations and everything where I've changed around with setups and transmissions and different things, and I've switched between like short and long yokes and stuff, and I've switched drive shafts, and I needed a big, wide yoke and a narrow yoke. And if I've got a solid bushing on here, I don't have to worry about switching out my yokes. I can take one yoke off, put another one on, go to 125 foot-pounds, move on. If you're using a crush, every time you're taking the yoke off and you're tightening the yoke back up and everything, are you putting more preload onto this? Are you pulling it down? And that's always a question in my mind. The other thing is what happens to this over time? I don't believe that you can put enough pressure on one of these to crush it over time, but I just don't like the idea of it. I like a solid one. Once you're done, you get your preload number, it's fixed with a solid one. So that's why I always go with a solid. But I had, because I didn't set up this gear originally, and it had a crush one in it. We're going to use that, all right? We're going to use it to our advantage because this crush should represent how this pinion housing works out with its races, because I'm using the same bearings and the same races. So if I measure what this is, I should be able to get really close with a solid, provided that this was right. And I'll show y'all what I'm talking about here. So if you're breaking a gear down, and this is even a stock gear, so like if you're out junkyard hunting and you find, a 9-inch Ford with a 3.50 gear in it or something, and you pull it out, don't throw that away, because that's going to tell you where you should be, very close, within 2 thousandths plus or minus of where it should be on its solid. So let me look at this and see what it is. All right. And I have got, so we're going to hit it maybe 3 different places. I've got 460, 460, 460. All right, 0.460 is what this is. Okay, the solid itself is 434. 434. So if I take 434, I'm just going to drop that on. All right, so there's 434. All right, and I think I've got a 16. So let's see. When you buy the solid, you're going to get a pack of these little shim washers with it. So 460 is what it was. That's 434. There's the 16. So 434 and 16, that gets me to 450. All right. And then I should have a 10. All right. And that's reading about 11. Okay. So 450, 461. So I'm right on it. Put a little bit of oil on it. All right. All right. I'm going to drop that on there. Let's see how close we can get. I'm just going to feel it by hand to start with. All right, so it's definitely not, I don't feel it. Like, for example, if I just knock the bearing down and I'm like, wow, that's tight. Well, then I know I didn't have enough shims in there and the two bearings is pinched up against each other. So no point even going any further. Let's get it apart. But it is fine. So let's load it. All right. There we go. Okay. All right. Come on. Let's get her locked in here good and solid. All right, here we go. All right, so we know we're loaded as much as we should be, okay? Now, let's see. So I think we're gonna need to pull a spacer out. I'm pretty sure we are, just by doing that right there. So it freewheels, but I wanna show you there's no slack in it. I don't feel any slack. I can't move it back and forth or anything like that. So that means that I'm right on the bearing. I just don't have any crush, any preload against it, all right? For that reason, I want to just drop 2 thousandths. That's all I want to drop is about 2 thousandths, all right? Because 2 thousandths adds somewhere around like 4 inch-pounds. It varies, new bearing versus old bearing. But you're going to add 4 or 5 inch-pounds per 2 thousandths, I think, is something like that. I've been told that before. Now, I'm going to take this back apart and take and swap those spacers out to do that. And this is the part where you got to be patient when you're working with the solid, so you're not fighting with having to apply 200 or 300 foot-pounds to crush that washer. The trade-off is you're going to take this apart a couple of times. So, in my opinion, this is still much easier than trying to crush down. All right, so let's get that bad boy off there. All right. Yeah, in my opinion, this is still the better way to go. I don't care if I have to take this thing and take it apart and adjust it, 7 or 8 times. Still better than a crush washer. Snug where I can pull this off. Now right here is where you've got a shop press. That's going to be ideal, but I'll work with what I got. And so y'all don't give me grief. I just work with what I got. I'm going to show you how to do this with minimum tools. Nothing but some Harbor Freight tools and stuff. We're going to do this and get it right. All right. So I got that on there. We're going to pull that bearing back off. Now, don't beat this off, okay? Because if you took a hammer and were beating this off, of course you could break the housing, but then also you're beating the bearing needles against the race, and so that's bad mojo. Don't do that. The 16 shim, we're going to drop it to a 14. That's going to take 2 thousandths out of it, which adds 2 thousandths to the preload on it. So put it all right back. And Now the other question is, of course, we had a crush to go by that got us really close. What if you didn't? Well, you just want to start wide and just, you know, take a breath and say, hey, I may end up taking this apart an extra 2 times or something because of that. But like I would start, instead of starting at like 460, I would have started at maybe 465. And just make sure, I don't ever want to start tight because that can kind of fool you because your preload, you're feeling preload, but now the preload is carrying it instead of the actual solid being crushed, all, you know, being flat, holding it solid, and all those shims being, you know, crushed down flat and everything. Instead, your bearings are holding it. So you really want to start with a little bit of slack and work your way, you know, creep your way up to it, and not the other way is ideal. Let me turn that over. All right. Yeah, I feel some. Let me tighten up on her and see where I'm at. See if that added enough. We may have to go a little more. Alright. Oh, wrong one. Alright, there it is. See how it's stopping? I know I got preload on it now. It's not just coasting. Question is it enough? I'm going to leave that right there for a second. Come over here. I'm going to show y'all. Alright, so this is a holder for a 9-inch Ford housing. I just slapped this one together. You can get these pre-made for, I think, around $50. But anyway, this one right here, all this is, let me get that out of the way. All this is I had an old J-bar or something that had the big 3/4 inch rod, you know, with a clevis on the end and everything, and I just took that and welded that down, took a nut, made a pinch nut out of it, put the shaft into a piece of 1.25 inch square tubing. This is a couple pieces of angle iron here, and then I just took and just welded 3 bolts on using the housing itself as an alignment, and boom, now I've got a 9-inch holder. So they're not that hard to build. You can just knock you one out for when you need one, and that way we can turn it over, we can lock it down. But I want to throw the housing up in it where we can use it to hold the pinion in while we're checking it. So the way this works, drop it in there on those 3 bolts, just like that. We're going to put some nuts on where we can flip it upside down, and it's going to make our life a lot easier. Alright, let's just drop her. Just going to use this as just a holding support here. Okay, check it out, y'all. Now I've just got a beam inch pound. If you had one that has the scale on it, the needle going around or whatever, they have got a yield indicator that shows where you're at for your max and everything. Would make it easier, but a beam works fine. I'm just looking, because what I'm doing is I'm just going to watch. It's not the start, it's after you get going. And I'm just going to turn this and see. I'm not quite to 5 inch pounds. I'm at about 3. Okay, is where I'm at. I'm at about 3. So go. I'm going to take it apart, and I'm going to take about 1 to 2 more thousand out of it and everything. So let's get that knocked out. I was able to get 1.5 thousandths out, is what it looked like it measured. And I measured them together. Let's see where that gets us. Yeah, we're there. We're there. Yep. Probably running about 6 to 7 right there. Okay? And that is money. Money. You want preload on this pinion. The pinion is, the 2 bearings are very close together, and not having preload here lets that high point gear twist. So make sure you get that preload on there. All right, so that's done. Now for the next part. We're going to go ahead and put our pilot bearing here. All right, so we got a cage bearing that goes in the back of the housing. It helps support. This bearing right here sits on the end right there, and all it's doing is it is keeping this gear right here. It is helping to any deflection or twist on the end. It's just a helper bearing is really what it is. It's helping these two out right here just a little bit because they're so close together. All right, but it's important. Okay, so let's get her in. Okay. You make sure when you drive it in, this is a 1 5/16", 3/4 inch drive, and that fits that outside housing. But make sure you're on the outside housing of the bearing, not in the middle of it. All right, so. Just like that. All right, I've got a snap ring that goes on mine. Okay, so it goes in there. Now, they come from the factory. Most of them come with it's a star washer. It's an outside retainer washer, and they work fine and everything, but they're a little hard to come by. They come in kits, so if you take a stock one apart, don't get rid of that washer, because you're not going to be able to just go to a parts store and get it without buying like a full rebuild kit or something. But this one has got a groove in it that's been put into it. All right, so here's the next thing. There's a number that they write. Now, Richmond puts the number here. The number could be wrote in different places. It could be in the literature that comes with it. It just depends on what brand. But now this is a Richmond Excel, and for them, when they run these gears and set them and everything, they actually take and etch the number right onto the end of the pinion. And like with this one right here, what does it say? It says 1.031, okay? Well, what is 1.031? Well, from the end of that pinion to the exact center of the ring gear should be 1.031 inches for me to set this gear exactly how they cut it and they checked it and everything. 1.031 is what this gear calls for. It's different for every gear. It's not like that 1.031 is for every 567 gear, and like a 650 is some other gear, and a 350. No, it's not that. It's when this gear was cut and the machine made it and everything, that was the number that came out to show exactly where this one is. Now, the exact center is across these caps right here. Now, these caps can be off. You can check that because it should be exactly half of the distance from the bottom of that to here should be half of that width. And these are, I don't have any problem with these, they are in the center, but that's what you're going to. And so it's a simple process, because what we're going to do is we're going to put the pinion in, and then we're going to put a straight edge across it, and we're just going to measure that distance. And that's all it is to it. Important point. That's going to get us really close. If everything works out and we measure it and it's exactly like what their measurement was, it will be perfect. In the real world, we could end up a couple of thousandths to one side or the other of what they had, you know, in the manufacture of the gear. All right, and that's why you're always still going to look, you know, at your drive and your coastline, your wear patterns and all of that, because that's what's controlling that, is this part right here. But that number is going to get you really, really close. All right, now for this gear, it already had a shim in it. All right, and that shim, it's a little bit rusted and beat up, so I'm going to replace it, but I am going to start with the same shim thickness. This shim right here is a 20 thousandth shim that was in this pinion, because every pinion and third member housing has a particular shim that's like it's going to get it right in there where it should be. So I've got a new pad that's not rusted or beat up. I'm going to find a 20 in amongst them, and we're going to throw it on, and we're going to start there. There's a 20 right there. That's what we're going to start with. All right. Now, I'm not putting the seal on or anything like that yet. because all of this is coming apart. Whoop, I gotta turn my gear over. Hang on a second. So I got a good straight edge here. And I am going to take a couple bolts and I am going to put the cap bolts in here right across here, just like this right here. And put 2 cap bolts in. This is how I do it. There's lots of different ways to skin this cap, but this is the way I skin it. So I'm just going to take that until it, all right, so that's on that straight edge here. Okay, so now there's my straight edge across the center. So that bottom line right there of that straight edge represents the exact center. And I've just got a set of snap gauges is what I've got. Now you can use a depth gauge if you've got one here. There are tools just for this. And then all you do, you get it where you want it, pinch it down, check it, just barely contacting, maybe just a little bit. It's off just a hair. I'm going to loosen it up. That's probably it right there. Yep. Alright, so I've got my measurement. I turn around, drop it in my micrometer and see what it is. Don't squeeze it, just measure it. So I've got about 1.010, 1 inch and 10 thousandths. So 1 inch and 10 thousand, but I want 1 inch and 31 thousand. So I'm 21 thousandths too deep. So either I need to add another 20,000 shim, or I need to find a 40,000 because I put a 20 in there. Right. So what we're going to do, we're going to take it back apart. We're going to put another 20 in, and that should get us there. Right there. Okay, there's my measurement. All right, let's see if I can hold it up here and see what that is. I came up 1033. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it right there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pinion out because I'm done with the pinion. I've got it where I want it. All right, so this pinion at this point, you know, the seal can go in, and oh, there's something I want to show you too. So let me show you. Before you put the pinion seal in, there is a washer that goes in right here. This is a oil splash washer is what this is. What this does is it's paper thin, and what it does is oil is getting slung against this front bearing, and you want that, okay? So it's getting lubricated. It's got a drain back right here, and this is a deflector, because this right here is that oil is being forced through this pinion bearing, and it's blowing. Well, it's blowing right towards this seal. If you don't have this washer in place, I don't care how good your front seal is, it is going to leak. Because all this does is it deflects that force, you know, like a water hose spraying. It's just deflecting it and keeping it from spraying right against the front seal is all. So this right here goes in, just drops in just like that right there. It just stops all of that pressure from being forced right against it. So now this pinion seal is ready to go. And don't forget, when you put, this isn't the yoke that's going to go on this, but when I do put the right yoke on it and everything, I will put a new pinion nut. So I keep an old one for setup and everything, but now when you get completely done, always put a new pinion nut on it. It's got thread sealant and everything on it. And put that on there. And we'll just leave this one on here for now, but it is going to switch. But let me put the seal on. So that's good. Next up here, we're going to do the ring gear onto the spool. It's 7/16 fine thread bolts. And we're going to use a little bit of the semi-permanent blue Loctite. It's not necessarily required, but I'd rather use it than not use it, so I'm going to use just a little bit. of the Loctite here. And I'm going to torque these to 65 foot-pounds is what I am torquing these to. You could probably go more. And then if you're like, if it's a Dana or something, I think it's 1/2-inch hardware and you would be using, you would go like 80 foot-pounds instead if it was 1/2-inch hardware. But just a 9-inch Ford stock is 7/16, so 65 foot-pounds is all we're going to do here. Let's set that on this edge there. Get a couple of these started. Alright y'all, so next up, I'm going to put a spool in. It's going to sit like this. Got my size right. Put a little lightweight oil on my bearings here. Alright, like that. I'm going to set my races on. And I am going to try to not pinch my fingers. Let's set this down in here. Alright. Got that. Then I'm going to set my adjuster in here. If you got your race in there, it acts as a guide so that you can get your adjuster sitting square. Alright, let me show you on this one. So I got my race in here. My race is being held down flat, and that's kind of, that race acts like a squaring tool. If you just put this in without having your race here, it's real easy to get this cross threaded. So the race helps you to just sit it down in there and get it right. And remember, if that adjuster will not turn easily by hand without the cap on, you've got it cross threaded. Don't put the cap on. Alright, so I'm going to snug everything up, sitting there like that. Not tight. When I say snug, literally, just... Alright, I'm going to put my caps on here. A little lightweight oil on those. Now, when you put this cap on, what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to take and hold it up and start the bolt before you drop the cap on, because that's going to help to align the cap to the threads, okay? Alright, so my bolts are started in there good, and then just drop it down. Again, make sure that adjuster will turn. If it'll turn by hand without it tightened down, and you know you've got it right. If you're using stock hardware, they torque to 75 foot-pounds. If you're using aftermarket, most of them will tell you, but they could be like 80 or 85 or even more, just depending on what it is. All right, I'm doing these evenly. There's one. There's the other. Next thing we got to do is the preload on it. And here's all I do, okay? And if you've got an old axle, you could cut one off. You know, you're just wanting something to make a drive to be in the middle of the spool. So however you accomplish that, it doesn't matter. You skin a cat 10 different ways. But I've already got a bolt in the end of these. This is where that I keep my axles floating exactly where they should be. And so you see that. That's a 9/16 head on it. So it just makes it real simple. So I'm just going to take, when I go all the way through to the other side, of course, it's going to tighten up when it jumps to the other side of that spool. If it didn't tighten up, you could wrap some tape or something around it. Just like I said, this is one of those, you know, just whatever works well. So I'm going to tighten it up good where it won't fall out, because we're not going to be beating and banging on it as far as making it fall out. And then I'm going to turn it straight up like that. Tighten her down. Okay. I got me a 9/16 driver here. I'm just going to drop that on. Drop my inch-pound meter on it. And I'm just going to turn nice and smooth. I'm looking for about 7 to 10 inch-pounds. If this was new bearings, I would be looking for more like 20. Okay? Alright, so I'm doing this, and I'm only getting about 3 or 4 is all I'm getting. So I'm definitely going to tighten this up. It's super simple. If you don't have enough preload, you can run into problems where you start tearing stuff up. If you put too much preload, way too much preload, yes, is going to take away the life of the bearings. But you know, if you built one of these and the gears were running in and it was at 20 or 25 inch-pounds instead of, say, 10, it's not just going to destroy the bearings, but it's going to be harder on your gear oil. It's going to, you know, take more horsepower away, pull down on the gear, build more heat. And so you're not going to get like this immediate failure. But yeah, you are going to shorten the life of everything. All right, so now I'm right up about 10 inch-pounds right there. We'll drop that axle out. Get out of there. All right, so I've got my load right, but my gear isn't in the right place. And right here is where I'm going to take a marker and I'm going to mark these bearings, because now I'm counting. Now as I adjust it, if I go a turn in on this one, I'm going to go a turn out on that one. Because what I'm doing is I'm keeping the distance between the two exactly the same. That's what you're doing at this point. Let me find a marker. Thought I had one. Oh, yeah, got one right there. So I'm going to take and just straight up the top, right here, I'm going to mark that bearing right there. And I'm going to mark this bearing. Okay. And then you can use the holes and we can count and keep up with it. Alright, so now let's see if we can drop that pinion in. And it may, if I've got it far enough away, it may just drop right in for me, if we're lucky. I'll make sure as I draw it in. Yeah, and there's plenty of room. Just make sure when you're dropping this pinion in that you don't suddenly hang the gear, something like that, from not having enough room. We've got it preloaded, but we've got it away. So we've got a lot of slack in it right now because we've got it away from our pinion where we can put our pinion in without a problem. Now this is where the next thing that you really got to have this. Dial indicator, this is one I've had for years. This is just a Harbor Freight dial indicator, Harbor Freight magnetic base and everything. I think maybe $10 or $15 now for this, maybe about $20, $25 for the base. I'm sure on Amazon there's these stuff is out here cheaper, so you just hunt around. But anyway, this you've got to have. And the way this works is you just set this up where that you can set it on one of the tips of your teeth and not touch anywhere else. Alright, so I want it to bump the tooth, but not anywhere else. Get it right, and then I'm going to flip the magnet on. And then I am going to set it to 0. Okay, and I'm going to see, and then I'm just going to rock my gear on the pinion. Alright, and so I've got about 47,000 of backlash in it, is what it's got. Well, I want to take it all the way down to about 10. That's what I'm after, is about 10 thousandths of backlash. It's a new gear. I want it down to about 10. All right, now what are we going to do? We want to move this gear toward the pinion because the pinion's on this side. So I want to back this nut off and bring this nut in the exact same amount. They're marked, so not a big deal. So I'm going to put that adjuster in there. I want to back this one off. All right, so I'm gonna go 3/4 of a turn is what I'm gonna do, which is real simple. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take that line around until it goes to the split. Goes to split in the cap. Since I was right in the dead middle, 3/4 of a turn would be the split in the cap. All right, now I'm gonna do the same thing over here, but this one I'm gonna go in 3/4 of a turn to the split in the cap. All right, let's see what we're at. All right, that got me all the way down to about 23. 3/4 of a turn got me down to about 23. I'm gonna bet I need that last quarter. Now let's see if that gets us there. Okay, that's money. So that's 10 thousandths backlash. That's what we're after, right there. Got our preload still correct, everything. Okay, so I unlock this, move that out the way. So this is Prussian blue. Everybody's using the yellow now, and the yellow is easy to see, but I've always used this blue, and it's what I've got. And don't get it on you, because this stuff is terrible to get off, and it sticks to everything. All right, so we're just going to take a couple of teeth here. Just like this. Get it on there good and thick. And lay that over there. I'm gonna roll it around there. And then I am going to just give her a good workout through that pinion gear. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to look and we're going to see where we're at. All right, y'all, check it out. This steep side right here, this is the drive side. And the wear pattern, the center of the wear is about right here. It's just a little bit high of the center of the gear. Well, I really want that to be center to low. So this coast side right here, if you can see it, it's low on the coast. And what this is telling me is that my pinion is not deep enough, regardless of our measurements, regardless of what we did to get it to the numbers that they run it into. It's telling me that my pinion needs to be sitting in deeper. Okay, so we're going to pull our pinion back out. We're going to reduce shims. I'm going to go down on shims about 10 thousandths, as much as that is, and see if that doesn't get us there. Okay, so I pulled this pinion out, took out 10 thousandths, put it all back together, set the backlash back to 10 thousandths. Let's do it again. This is where it comes into you being patient. Now I've been really lucky on getting the measurement right, but now this one right here, she showed me, which was good. This is the one we got on video, and it showed me. Don't ever just think it's gonna be right. All right, let's run her. Let's see what she does. All right, let's see. Let's see where we are. Oh, that is better. That is better. All right, so we've moved it down into the middle. We are definitely, I want to make sure, see, I'm looking for the wear to definitely be gone and have blue before I get to the end of the tooth. All right, and it's starting really close to the bottom of the tooth. I'm way down here, close to this edge, so I'm a little bit towards the bottom, and that's what I want. I want to be center low. All right, let's look at the coast. My coast is in the middle. I love it. I love it. All right, so now we've got that wear pattern where we want it. I want that drive side, that's that steep angle there. I want that to be center to low. I want to make sure that the pattern is off the tooth. The bluing dye being took away is off of the tooth and everything, and I've still got bluing dye before it gets out to that edge right there. That's really important. All right, and it is. It's right where we want it. The coastline is up on the tooth in the center of it, like where we want it. So it's perfect. That's what we're after right here. She's all locked back down. We got her all preloaded. Everything's done. Of course, I'm going to swap the yoke out before I actually install it and put a new pinion nut on it when I do that. Other than that, this thing is ready to go. If it doesn't eat any shrapnel, or I don't get debris or contaminants in it, and I always change it and put good gear oil in it when I change the gear out and everything, I expect this thing to be reliable for years. All right, it's not that hard. Minimum tools. You can do this at home in your shop. You just have to be patient, take your time, you know, take it apart, put it back together a couple of times if you have to get it right, but you can do it. Hey, if you just stumbled across this video, we've got a lot of videos about dirt track, circle track racing, everything, setting up, building cars at the track, the whole 9 yards. So check out the playlist, check out our videos. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And if you found this useful, smash that like button, share it with a friend. I really appreciate it, and see you next time.